So one of the difference between tuple and every other data structure in Python is the ability of tuple to be immutable. By immutable, we are saying that the values cannot be changed, cannot be modified. And you may ask, why is that? The simplest answer is because of data security and data integrity. So you want to maintain data integrity, you want to maintain data security, and that is why tuple is immutable and is one that is different from the rest of other data structure. My name is Issa Jacob. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In my previous video, I talked about a list in Python. I discussed everything you need to know about list in Python. So today we will be discussing about tuple in Python. Now, tuple and list are similar, but unlike a list, a tuple is an ordered, immutable, and iterable collection of elements. Okay, that's a big English. So what I'm basically saying is that whatever whatever value or item you have in a tuple remain the way they are. You cannot change them. You cannot modify your values or the data that you have in your tuple. So a tuple cannot be modified once it is created. Okay, and then there are key things you should know when it comes to tuple. The first is, I've said that it is immutable. The second is tuple maintain their order of the elements. Okay, then tuple can take different data types. Okay, it can take a string, it can take a boolean, it can take an integer. All right, let's see in code how does it work. All right, so how do we declare a tuple? So we can declare a tuple. Let's say we are creating a fruits. Okay, the fruits. So we'll now do like this, and then inside this parenthesis we can now declare a tuple. So we have declared an empty tuple, as you can see. Now let's pass in value. So let's look at the fact that a tuple can take different data types. So we can have a string. So here I will say orange, okay, oranges or orange, pineapple, okay, what else, carrot, okay, and the list goes on. Now let's create a tuple that takes different data types. So we can call it, let's call it data underscore type, then equal to, then we have our parenthesis or bracket, as you may call it. Then we can have an integer like this. Okay, we can have an integer like this. Okay, then we can also have a string in the same place. We can say food here. Then we can also create another one, integer food. Okay, let's create a boolean. So we can have a true here. Okay, and also have false. Okay, and then we can also have a float. So in this case 9.0. Okay, so a tuple can take different data type, as you can see, and then a tuple can also be duplicated. Okay, so we can duplicate food. We can also duplicate these values here. Okay, so we can duplicate them like this. So this is how a tuple works in Python. Okay, a tuple is created with a square bracket, and inside the square bracket you pass in your values that you want to have in your tuple. And then a tuple can also have different data type, a string, a boolean, a float, an integer, and so on. Okay, and then each of these value maintain their order. Okay, they maintain their order. You cannot change once it is created. All right, so this is what you should know about tuple. Okay, as you journey with me, I will show you how to manipulate tuple values. So let's look at the tuple methods. What are tuple methods? So tuple as a data structure in Python comes with a built-in method that we can use to manipulate data. take for example, we have a tuple, so I'll call this numbers. I'll call this variable numbers, and then I'm going to pass in 1 to 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then we have 10. Okay, so we have 10 integer value in this number variable. Now, if we want to call the method count, for example, what the method count do is that it returns the number of times a specific value appear in a tuple. So if for example we allow 8 to appear different times, so we are repeating 8, and then let's repeat another value. Let's repeat 3. Okay, let's repeat 3. Okay, so we can do something like this. Okay, now so we have values that are repeated in this tuple. Now if we now call the method count, what we are trying to say is come and check this value and tell us how many times it appear in this tuple. So we can call our variable and say number dot count. Okay, when we call the dot count, then we can now pass in a value, okay, that we are going to check how many times it appears. So in this case, we can say we can create a variable for it. Let me create a variable for it and let's use it. Let me just call this variable f, and then when I print f, okay, and then I run it, we should be able to have 3. Why? Because the value 8 appear 3 times, and that is what we are seeing here. Okay, if we put 3, for example, if we put 3 here, it's going to tell us how many times 3 appear. So you can see it's telling us that it's appearing 7 times, as you can see here. Okay, so this is how the dot count method works. Now the next one I want us to look at is the index method. So what does the index method do? It returns the index, which is the position of our value. Okay, so if we want to find the index of a particular value, all we need to do is to specify the index. So how do we do it? We can just create a variable. This time around I'll call that variable index for us to understand. Index equal to, then I'll call our numbers, and then I'll do dot index, and then I'll now pass in the number we are looking for. Okay, so I can now pass in. So which value are we looking for the index? Okay, let's look at the index of our 1 here. So if we pass in 1 here, okay, and we print index, oh, we are having 0. Why? Because every value in a tuple begins with index 0. So our 1 here is index 0, our 2 here is index 1, our 3 here is index 3, our 3 here is also index 4. So if we also pass in 3, for example, it's going to return for us. Okay, if we pass in 3, it's going to return for us the first occurrence. Okay, the first one he's seeing here is what is going to return to us, and in this case it is index 2. Okay, so you can see it here. So index 0, index 1, index 2. Okay, the same way if we pass in 8, it's going to tell us the index of the first value here. Okay, it's going to tell us the index of this first value here. So when we pass in 8 here, if we say 8 here and we run our code, it's going to print 13 for us. Okay, so 13. Okay, so that is why we are having index 13. So the index tells us where our item or value is in our tuple. Now the next one I want us to take a look at is the concatenation. What does concatenation mean? To add, okay, 2 or more tuples together. Okay, and we can do that by having, let me say, my underscore string, and then I'll say equal to, and then I open our tuple, and then I can pass in string value. So here I'll say John, here I'll say Amaka. Okay, Amaka here. Then here I will say cheesy. Okay, I don't know who is cheesy. So we have cheesy here. Then here I can now say Abdul. Okay, we can say Abdul here. All right, so now we can add these two tuples together by using concatenation. Okay, by using concatenation. How does the concatenation works? The concatenation works in such a way that we can use the plus operator to add them together. So I'll just call our variable concat. Okay, I'll call our variable concat and say equal to, then I'll now say numbers plus my string. Okay, and when I print concat, it's going to add these two tuples together and then assign the value to this concat variable. Okay, so when we say print concat now, concat concat here, and then we run it. Okay, you can see that in this tuple we now have integer and our string value here. Okay, so this is how concatenation works in Python. You can add two tuple together by using the plus operator. Okay, so you can have an integer value and a string value and add them with a plus sign. All right, so that is how concatenation works in Python. Now the next thing I want us to do is about repetition. What does repetition mean? It means that we can create a new tuple by repeating an existing tuple using asterisk operator. Okay, now how does it work? So here, okay, so we are done with this. So I'll come down here and then I'll now say, okay, let's say we are going to repeat my string now. Okay, you can see that we have 4 values here. We start from 0 to 3. Okay, so 0, John is at index 0, Amaka is at index 1, Cheesy is at index 2, and then Abdul is at index 3. Okay, 0, 1, 2, 3. All right, so if we decide to repeat them, for example, if we decide to repeat this particular tuple, for example, we will do it by using the asterisk. So how can we do it? So we can create a variable and call it repeat. Okay, let's call it repeat, and then we say equal to, then we can now say my string, then asterisk 3. What we are saying with this line of code is we are repeating my string 3 times. Okay, and when we print repeat, we should be able to have a tuple with all of it. So you can see John, Amaka, Cheesy, John, Amaka, Cheesy, John, Amaka, Cheesy, Abdul. Okay, so this is how the repeat operation can be done in a tuple by using the asterisk operator. Okay, and in what scenario, what will make you to repeat a value? You can repeat a value in a situation where you are trying to get you want to keep you want to have duplicated value. Okay, maybe you are setting questions and then these questions will have to be repeated. Okay, and then you have a loop that randomly pick any of these questions. You can create a tuple that repeat those questions, okay, at interval or as you desire. Okay, so this is how repetition operation can be done in a tuple. Now the next thing is we can also use the length method to understand and to know how many values we have in a tuple. Okay, so if we do like this, we can say so let me have a variable that say length. Okay, length, then I'll now say equal to my length method here, and then I can now pass in my variable, which is my string here. Okay, so this is how the length method works. Okay, so for you to create a to know the length of the values in your tuple, you create a variable. We have a variable here, then we are calling the length method and then passing our variable, which is on print length. We should be able to see our value. So you can see that we are having 4 value in my string here. If it is numbers, for example, we print numbers, for example, and we say print length, okay, it is going to tell us that there are 18 values there. Okay, so this is how we can find the how many values or items we have in a tuple by using the length method. Having explained some of this method, now the next question is, how do we create a tuple with a single item? Now, for some reasons which I may not know, you may want to create a tuple, okay, with a single value or with a single item. The requirement may demand that users should be stored separately. Okay, how to create a tuple with one item? Okay, so to create a tuple with just one item, it's a must you add a comma after the item. Okay, so how do we do this? We can have our value like this. So let me call this, so let me just use this. So I'll call this tuple equal to, here I'll pass in my value. So maybe I want John here. Now what we do, what you are seeing that what we just did here is just a string. It is not a tuple. Okay, so when we print our type like this, if we pass in type and we say type and then we pass in our variable, this tuple, okay, it's going to tell us that it is not a tuple. Okay, you can see it's telling us that it's a class of string. Okay, it's a class string, it's not a tuple. But for you to now make this value a tuple value, you need to add a comma. So the moment you add a comma, you have now been able to create a tuple with a single variable or with a single value. So you can now see that it's now telling us class tuple. Okay, so this is how to create a tuple with one item. Okay, so you use the comma to tell Python that this value that you are seeing in this bracket is a tuple. The moment that comma is not there, Python will not recognize it as a tuple. We can convert a list to tuple. Okay, so how do we convert a list to tuple? We can convert a list to tuple by doing something like this. So let's say we have a list and then a list of numbers. So we can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we have a list of integer value 5. Okay, 0 to 4. Now what do we do? Now we can convert this by using the tuple operator. So how do we do it? So we can call this my tuple. Okay, I'll call it my tuple equal to, then I'll now call tuple. Okay, I'll call tuple, okay, tuple, and then pass in my list variable. So if I pass in my list variable, I am converting the list to a tuple. So when I do something like this, lst, so when I print my tuple, we are having a class of tuple. Okay, but I don't need this. Let me remove this. So we can do something like this. Okay, so when we run it, you can see that it's already converted to a tuple with bracket. This is how to convert a list to a tuple. Okay, we can also convert a string to tuple. Okay, how do we do that? Okay, we can have a string like this. Let's say my string equal to, what should be my string now? So let me say going home. Okay, going home. Okay, let me call it going home. So if I have something like this, okay, I can convert it to a tuple. How can I do that? The same way we were able to achieve that with this is the same way. So we can create a variable that say my string. Okay, this time there will not be on this underscore, so it will be my string, then equal to, we'll call tuple and then pass in our string, my string variable. Okay, and then when we print my string, okay, when we print my string, we are having each of that length as a tuple. Okay, we are having each of the letters as tuple. We have G taking index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4. Remember, our space also take a place also. Okay, so this is how a tuple, a string, can be converted to a tuple. I've been able to explain how a list can be converted to a tuple. I've also been able to explain how a string can also be converted to a tuple. So this is how tuple works in Python. Now the next thing I want to explain is how do we access item in a tuple. We can use their index. Okay, like I said before, you use the index is a reference to a position where our values can be found. Okay, so it refers us to where our value can be found. That is what the index done. So how do we now access our value? So we can do something like this. How do we now access them by their index? So for us to access them, we can use their index. So if we want to print a marker, for example, we can do something like this, print, and then we can pass in my string. Okay, my underscore string, and then we have a square bracket, and inside the square bracket we specify the index, okay, we are looking for. So a marker is in what is index 1, so we can pass in 1 here. Okay, and when we print our value, is going to print a marker for us. Why? Because a marker is at index 1. Okay, so you use the index to access the items. Okay, so we are using the index 1 to access the item in index 1. So we can also do the same with index 0, okay, which is going to print John for us, like it, as you can see here. Then we can also use cheesy, which is index 2, okay, and then as you can see here. So this is how to use the index to locate a particular value in a tuple. Now the next one is we can also use the negative index. Okay, just the same way we have 2 here, we can add a negative here, and then by so doing it's going to look at it from the back here. Okay, so when we run this code, it's going to give us cheesy. Okay, why? Because we have is going to look at the second item from the right to the left. So if we make it 1, for example, if say -1, okay, and we run it, it's telling us Abdul. Okay, why? Because it's looking, when you add a negative to the index, it's going to look at it from the right to the left and not from the left to the right. So this is how negative indexing works. Okay, we can also specify the beginning and the end. Okay, we can say that it should start from index 1. Okay, start from index 1 and include index 2. Okay, so and when we run this, it's going to print a marker for us. Okay, why? Because we said start from index 1, okay, and stop at index 2. So this is index 0 and this is index 1, and then this is index 2. So he's not going, this in whatever you indicated here is where it's going to stop, but will not include values on that in that list. So if we increase this 2 to 3, for example, we add 3 here, and then we run again, you can see that it's going to return Amaka and Cheesy for us. Why? Because Amaka is at index 1, Cheesy is at index 2, but Abdul is at index 3, which means you will not include Abdul because that is where we have specified it to stop. So on the right hand side is where it's going to stop, on the left hand side is where it's going to start. Okay, so this is how indexing works with tuple in Python. Okay, the same way we can specify the beginning and the end, we can also specify just the beginning. alone or just the end alone. Okay, so we can just say, just don't include anything, just end it here, end it at index 3. So once we run our code, it's going to print John, Amaka and Chizzy, but will not include index 3 here. Okay, so this is 0, 1, 2, 3, so it will not include index 3. Okay, why? Because that is where we say it should stop. Okay, as you can see here. Okay, the same way we can also print something and say it should start there. Okay, if we do something like this, so here we are saying that it should start from index 1. Okay, so we can do something like this. Okay, and when we run it, it's going to print Amaka, Chizzy and Abdul for us. Okay, why? Because we have said that it should start from index 0. So we have said that it should start from index 1, index 2. We have Amaka, Chizzy, so it will include Amaka, Chizzy and Abdul. Okay, because we do not specify the end, it will start from where we say it should start from. Remember, whenever you are specifying the end, again the value at that position will not be included, because that is where it is stopping. Okay, so this is how indexing works in Python, and when you are using negative indexing at all. Okay, now what if we want to check for a particular value in a tuple? Okay, we want to check for a particular value in a tuple. How can we do it? We can use the if statement to check if a particular value exists in a tuple. Okay, and for us to do that, we can do something like this. Okay, we can do something like this. So here we can now say, we use our if statement. We can say if in this case, okay, let me say John, if John in, what's the name, my string, my underscore string, print yes. Okay, print yes. Okay, else, okay, else print no. Okay, print no. All right, so this is how it works. So when we now run this code, okay, it's going to print yes for us. Okay, it's printing yes for us, but the moment we change John to a value that does not exist here, so let's say Henry. Okay, let's add Henry here. We say Henry, okay, and we run it, it's going to print no for us. Okay, it's going to print no for us. Why? Because we don't have any value called a Henry in this list. Now, one of the things you must also take note of is that values that you see here, letters are not the same. Okay, so if we bring Amaka here, okay, we are going to get yes. Why? Because Amaka exists. But the moment I change capital A to small a, they are no longer the same. Okay, they are no longer the same, and that's why we are getting this no. So in the ASCII table, capital letter A is different from capital letter B. Okay, so this is how we can check for value in a tuple using the if statement. Okay, now in the beginning of this video, I said that you cannot change the value of a tuple, but I want to show you how to change tuple values. Okay, so what we are going to do is just conversion. We'll convert a tuple back to a list, and then after we manipulate on the list, then we can now convert it back to tuple. How about that? Let's see how we can do that. So like this, I'll comment this out. Okay, so we can now have tuple. So I'll say amount of variable now. So let me use x equal to, I'll now say a tuple. Okay, oh, I already have a tuple here. So we are going to convert our string. Okay, let's convert our string to a list, and then we will manipulate it and then return it back to tuple. So how can we do that? So we now have my string. So we say let me use x equal to, So I'll now say my string, or let me convert it to a list first. Let me convert it to a list. That's the first thing. So the first step is to convert your tuple to a list. So we'll now say list. Okay. Oh my god, what am I doing? All right, so with our list constructor here, we are converting our my string tuple to a list. So when we print x, going to return our, you can see what is telling us here. So this is already in a list. Now let's add a value to this list. So we can say, we can do x and then a square bracket and passing a value. So let's say we have, so let's change the value at index 3. Okay, so at index 3 let's add another value. So instead of Abdul there, let's have Jacob there. So I'll say Jacob. Okay, Jacob. So when I print x here, okay, you can see that we have been able to replace Abdul with Jacob. Now that we have been able to manipulate on our list, let's now convert it back to tuple. So we can do something like this. I'll now do x again, or any variable you use is fine, but just permit me to use x. So I'll do x equal to, so I'll now call tuple, and then I'll now pass in the variable which we have converted to a list, in this case x. Okay, and when we print x, okay, you can see that we have now converted to a tuple. So this is how conversion works. So you can use the list constructor to convert a tuple back to a list, manipulate it as a list, and then return it back as a tuple. And that's what we are doing in this line. Okay, and thereby we are now printing the value in the tuple. So here our list tuple to a string list. Okay, and then by adding a new value at a particular index, which is data manipulation, and then we are now converting that list back to tuple, because tuple does not allow us to change value, and because it did not allow us to change value, we need a way to manipulate the data and then add the new values that we want. Okay, so this is how we can manipulate data in Python. Okay, we can manipulate tuple data in Python using list constructor and tuple constructor. Now the next thing is, with the delete keyword we can delete an entire list. Okay, so if we do something like this, if we use the del keyword and then we provide a variable, in this case x, okay, we're going to get an error. Okay, because the name x is not defined, because there's nothing there again. So we are going to run into an error because the x is not there. Okay, now so when you use the del keyword, you have to be careful not to delete your entire data, but you can also specify the index of the value you want to delete. So in this case, if you want to delete the value at index 3, for example, we can run it like this. Okay, oh yeah, okay, so again tuples. Okay, so we can use the del keyword. We can use the del keyword to delete a particular tuple. Okay, and when we run this code, we are going to run into an error that this x is not defined because we have deleted it. So this is how tuple can be manipulated, and a list can be a tuple can be deleted with the del keyword. Now the next thing is the tuple unpacking. What do we mean by tuple unpacking? So tuple unpacking simply means when we want to unpack the data that we have in a tuple. Okay, so when we create a tuple, for example, okay, from what we have been doing so far, let me bring my tuple down. Yeah, so let me bring them down. So now from what we have done so far, you will agree with me that we have a tuple here, okay? But if we want to unpack, it simply means we are trying to extract the values, the values here, that's John, Amaka, Chizzy, Abdul, into variables. Okay, we can create a variable that each of these values here will be assigned to them. How do we do that? We can do that with what we call tuple. We're going to create 4 variables that each of these value here we are going to be assigned to them. So permit me to say that we're going to have class 1, comma, class 2, comma, class 3, comma, class 4. Okay, class 4. Okay, and then we'll now assign my string variable here. Okay, so what we have done here is we are assigning each of these values to each of these variable we have declared as class 1, class 2. Okay, so you can see that each of them has already picked who they want. So we can now print. Okay, if we print class 1, okay, let's call it class 1. Okay, yeah, so it's going to give us John. Okay, when we say print class 2, okay, it's going to give us Amaka. So this is how tuple unpacking works. Okay, so I explain again. I said that when we create a tuple like this, like either a number or my string here, okay, and then we are trying to unpack, and I said that to unpack simply means to extract value back into variables. So what we are trying to do here is we are creating a variable that holds each of these values. Okay, so that is why we are creating 4 variables in a bracket and then assigning them the tuple variable here. Okay, and then printing each of these values to be sure of the value that is assigned to them from the unpacking. So this is how tuple unpacking works in Python. So the next one I'll be talking about is when we are using asterisk, okay, to assign variable. And by this, what do we mean? Okay, what I'm trying to say is there are situations that if the number of variable is less than the number of values, we can use the asterisk to assign values to those variables. So take for example, we have 3 values here. Okay, I'm using this string because our value here, okay, or let me use a string. It's more readable and understandable, but the same thing applied. Okay, the same thing is applied. Okay, let me use the int. So in this case, I'm going to remove the duplicated values. Okay, remove the duplicated values. All right, and then we are good to go. So I'm going to use the integer in this case. So what I'm saying is we are going to create we are going to use asterisk, okay, to assign the value of the arithmetic. So in this case, instead of having how many values do we have here? 1 to 10, right? So we are going to have let's say 1 to 5. Okay, so I'll do something like this. I'm still using this class variable, so I'm going to comment them out, and then I'm going to do something like this. So shift and then passing the variable, and then comma, I'll do class 5. Okay, class 5 here, and then I'll do equal to numbers. Okay, numbers. All right, now because I'm having the number we are having here is 1 up to 10, but the variable we are trying to unpack is 1 to 5. So in this situation, the variable will not be assigned to any one of them. So there is need for us to make it in such a way that one variable carry the rest if the number, the variable is not up to the number. So in this case, we can ask the class 5 to hold the remaining value. So if we do something like this and then we print, let's print each of them so it can be clear. So I'll do print class 1, class 1. So I'm going to print each one of them so that it will be clear. So when I print them, okay, so you can see class 1 is taking 1, class 2 is taking 2, class 3 is taking 3, class 4 is taking 4, but class 5 is taking the remaining data. Okay, so this is how tuple unpacking when you are using asterisk. So what we are doing is everybody pick the remaining one. You that you are left, you pick the remaining one. So that is what this asterisk is saying. It's just like when you are coming back from work and you have load of boxes and you have 2 children. Okay, so when your wife carried 1 box and the first child carried another box, the last child carried another box, then you still have another box inside the boot. So in such a situation, you are now saying, okay, since everybody have carried, I will carry the remaining one. So that language you are speaking, you are saying it here using the asterisk, where you are saying that, okay, since everybody have picked whatever they are able to pick, the remaining ones I will pick it. Okay, so that is what the asterisk is being used for. Okay, so this is how tuple unpacking using asterisk work. The same thing, it's not just the last variable. We can also move this from here and give to the fourth man here. Okay, if we give it to class 4, it's still the same thing. Okay, so you can see that class 4 will take the rest of the value, while class 5 will pick the last value. So this is how tuple unpacking work. How do we loop through a tuple? So for us to loop through a tuple, we will use a for loop and a while loop. So let's look at, so for us to loop through a tuple, we will use our for. Okay, let's use x in our variable, in this case my string. Okay, or let me use numbers. So numbers, then we can print each of the items in numbers, or each of the values in number. Okay, and when we do this and we run our code, okay, we are printing 1 to 10. So this is how it do. The same thing if we are using my string. Okay, and then we are printing x, we are printing all of the values in our variable. So this is how to loop through a list. Okay, then we can also loop through using their index. So when you loop through using their index, we'll be using the range to get the range of the numbers, and also using the length, the number of items in the list, and then to get their index. Okay, so we are going to use the range and the length function to create a loop. Okay, so let's do it. So we can say for I in range, then we now say length. Okay, so in the length function, we now passing our my string. Okay, let's use my string. So passing my string here. So we are now going to print. Okay, so we're now going to print the length. Okay, each of the individual indexes. So we can say fruits, my string. Okay, we can now say my string, and then we can now pass in our I, which serve as the index. So when we run this code, you can see that we have John, Amaka, Chizzy, and Abdul. Okay, but if we want to get their index, we can just print I. Okay, by just printing I, we can print their index. So you can see 0, 1 to 3. So this is how to loop through. Okay, using the for loop and also using the range and the length method. Then lastly, how we can also use the while loop. Okay, we can loop through using the while loop. So where we say, remember that whenever you are looping with the while loop, you need an indexing variable. Indexing variable simply means that it allows you to use the index to loop through. Okay, so we can have something like this, then variable, and then we can say that, we can say something like this, while, okay, while I is less than the length. Okay, then in this case my string. Okay, and then we can now print our index. Okay, just the same way we did it at the top there. So we have our bracket, square bracket, no, the variable comes first, so my string, my underscore string, and then we can now pass in the I, which is the index. Okay, and when we print it, now we cannot print it like this. Okay, when we print it like this, we are going to run into an infinite loop. Okay, so let's give it a try. Okay, and you can see that John is keep reading. Okay, so we need to stop this loop. Okay, so kill the terminal. All right, so we have killed it. Okay, so for us to avoid infinite loop, we need to add increment. So anywhere you are running a while loop in Python, always have your indexing variable and always increase it at every iteration. So by so doing, you will avoid an infinite loop. So when we say when I say I plus equal to 1. Okay, so what we are saying is at every iteration keep adding 1. So when we run it, we can also add the index here. Okay, if we add the index, we will not have this repeated value like this. So if we print again, okay, so here we can have John, Amaka, Abdul. So this is how a while loop works in Python. Thank you for joining me once again. In my next video, I'll be discussing dictionary in Python. Kindly like, subscribe, leave a comment below what you think about this video. See you soon.